Okay, so my project became so big that Claude can't properly understand it. So I made a project in Python entirely using Cursor with Composer and Claude. But it has gotten to a point where the whole code base is over 30 Python files. Code is super disorganized, might even have duplicated loops, and Claude keeps forgetting basic stuff like the imports at this point. When I ask it to optimize the code or to fix a bug, it doesn't even recognize the main issue and just ends up deleting random lines or breaking everything completely. Yes, I can relate. I have zero knowledge about Python. It's actually a miracle I got this far with the project, but now it's almost impossible to keep track of things. What do I do? Already tried using cursor rules, but doesn't seem to work. Cursor rules are actually sets of rules you can give to cursor to kind of follow your coding style. If you're using Python, you can tell it to code Python a certain way or JavaScript. In this video, we want to cover 3 points that we think are super important. And number one is the current madness of the crowds and the AI gold rush that we are right now in. Why the feature, it's actually a bug. And we're going to talk about Inference and how that changes AI coding and why this is the absolute best time to get ahead as a developer in how to do it. Because we actually believe that behind the paranoia, there is a lot of opportunities for ambitious developers to actually get ahead in these times and actually, see yourself 2 years from now in a very good position. So number one, the current madness of the crowds and the AI gold rush.
So I think the biggest problem is that a lot of people these days and a lot of software engineers are getting their information strictly from social media and YouTube, and whatever the YouTubers are kind of, masticating from whatever, the Sam Altmans and, the NVIDIA CTOs are saying, right? And the problem with these people is they have a vested interest into making you believe that AI will fundamentally change the game. So people, they just let their emotions control them. And I think it's I don't blame developers because a lot of them didn't have the time or the resources to do their own analysis. And that's the first advice of this video. Do your own analysis, play with the AI coding tools you have at hand and understand the architecture behind it and how they work. And that's what Bogdan and I will also do in this video. And going back to you, Bogdan, what is the biggest issue that you see with AI in coding when it comes down to coding?
Sure. So as I mentioned, the big problem is how the fundamental foundation of AI, which is inference, which is basically the ability to predict the next token based on statistically analyzing whatever your data set is. And the current hypothesis behind even things like Devin and all the AI coding tools is that if this is my size of the model, so let's say we're going to plot here, this would be the size of the model or data set, right? And then at the top, we have the quality, let's say, so this would be like quality of the coding suggestions or the autonomy or the size of the code base. But let's put all those metrics into a single one that is going to be the overarching quality. What everybody's trying to say is that we have kind of this curve where, the more you increase the size, the exponentially you increase the quality. And that's along those lines, there's like some sort of a singularity where you basically replace developers with AI because it became so smart that the quality is even higher than a human developer. The reality and what they are hiding from us is that the curve probably, if you look at the evidence and the AI research, looks more like this, where it goes kind of into a plateau. And nobody really knows where we are here, but you could see like GPT-3 right, kind of came out here and then GPT-4 and everybody's saying, like GPT-5 or DeepSeek or whatever will be here where boom, we replace developers. Zuckerberg said that. But the reality is probably GPT-4, 5 will be probably here, slightly better, and then you're going to have the next models here. And then OpenAI will need to somehow justify what they've been doing to the investors. And the reason for that is that when you increase the size, we have our LLM, which is literally a network, right? A weighted network. And so the idea is that I give an input and I get an output, right? And so the whole thesis beyond all the coding tools is that if this is my model and gets very big, and then I give it my whole code base, then the suggestion will get like better, right? It's like actually quality code. So that would be my code base. And then I have changes. The problem is that when you increase the size of the model, the suggestions you get are not better. They are actually worse because the bigger the model, the bigger this network, the more likely is that the question you ask gets answered by a different section of the model because it thinks, oh, actually, what you gave me, it's similar to this. So it cannot really differentiate between the different section it has. So the more code you throw at it, the more likely that the suggestion you get, it will be more of a hallucination. And there's different ways they try try to combat this. And one of them that we've seen right now with DeepSeek is what they call the circle of experts, where you can imagine this as you have inside the model, you don't actually have a single model, like a single LLM. And in reality, what you have inside it, it's different subsets of models. So you basically have a subset for coding, then you have one for mathematics. And inside the coding one, you might have one for JavaScript, object-oriented. And when you ask a question, it actually goes, and routes your question to the actual expert, right? And then gives you back the answer. So that's how they try to circumvent the fact that, the bigger the model, the more it will hallucinate. The problem with the circle of experts is that if AI will only be an expert on your own code, so let's say you train it on your code base, and this wakes a lot, you say, well, I'm going to train the model on my code base so it answers the questions as I want. And the problem there is that imagine you will end up just generating a lot of legacy code. So a lot of the things that developers do every day is we look at the code base and we try to move it towards where the business has moved, which doesn't exist on text, and towards where the technology is moving around us. That's why we always, the thing we hate most is dealing with legacy, but that's actually a lot of part of the job. And the problem with an AI that's trained on your code base is that it will actually generate more legacy. And if it's not trained on your code base, it's just this huge AI where you have all the code in the world, it will hallucinate. And these two problems will not be solved by increasing data. They will not be solved by increasing hardware, and they will not be solved by increasing the context, which is, I can take in your whole code.
And again, that's the fundamental problem that AI has right now. Whatever solution it proposes, it's kind of trained on this snapshot of reality that's reflected into the code base, but that's not reality itself. So until AI can have its own scientific process, right? It can internalize a problem-solving mechanism, and it can interact and it can try things itself in reality. Then we won't get there. And I honestly believe we are maybe centuries away from that. Who knows, right? But going back to to inference, you mentioned this as a feature. Like the feature becomes the bug. What do you exactly mean by that?
So whenever you go to a bigger code base, right? In the Reddit post, they say they had 30 Python files. This is a very small project. This is not a real size production enterprise application. Like we're talking about applications that have hundreds of files, even if it's a microservice. And the problem with AI is that with LLMs right now is that they will statistically try to infer the next token. And so they will give you sort of a statistical answer to whatever your question is. And the problem with statistical answers is that, first of all, they are geometrically expensive. So the more input we give, for every single token that the LLMs answers with, you will have to do kind of a round in the network itself and kind of go through all those different weights to come up with the right answer. And that's first of all, it's extremely inefficient. The only reason they can pull it off is because it's not, from a compute point of view, it's extremely, extremely inefficient. But we have better ways to actually give suggestions in huge projects, which are things like TypeScript, right? We have a type system. And yes, TypeScript and IntelliJ and autocomplete are not as powerful in giving you suggestions, but they're extremely powerful when you talk about thousands of lines of code. Like you could literally use static typing, as in TypeScript, to work on code bases that are huge, and you get great suggestions in seconds. And in terms of the compute, you're doing all on your local machine. So there's this mentality that I'm going to approximate the answer, right? I look at all the code on the internet, all the code on GitHub, and based on that code in my code base, I will approximate the answer statistically. That's a much more inefficient way to solve that problem than having dev tools like TypeScript, static typing, and IntelliJ combined. And so of course, they're not as powerful, but they're much, much faster. So that's where we need to make a distinctions between approximating an answer and giving an answer. And what humans are very good and developers are really good at giving you an answer. And what AI is really good, it's at kind of, suggesting some approximation of what it thinks the answer is.
But again, this does not eliminate the human factor. You still need a validator of the proposed solution. And this is why people like Mark Zuckerberg and Salesforce CEO saying, oh, we're not hiring engineers. Oh, we don't need engineers. I bet right now with all this DeepSeek coming out, I bet right now they are, where do they went? Do they went to the salespeople to ask them what's happening? No, they went back to the engineers. And this is why you can see behind the curtain and you can see that these people are bluffing. The market, the IT market needs more engineers than ever before. And it will need more engineers than ever before, despite claiming otherwise.
Exactly. And I think they will see themselves, as you mentioned, they believe in this, this kind of, this will happen and then we don't need any more developers. They sell that because they want to sell the AI tools. But the reality is more looking like this, where they're going to have a lot of legacy code that, the people they laid off, only the people they laid off knew about it. And the projects will be very big, very bloated. It's going to be very hard to keep track of things. And they'll have to rehire the people they fired if they really want to sell working software. Because yes, it's someone that did some side project, but we're talking about enterprise software, things that people pay money for. And what will happen, I would assume, is that companies that actually have a great engineering team and have great code will start gaining market share because they'll have an engineering advantage over companies that are over investing in sales or in AI. And one thing you've probably seen is that even if all the stocks plummeted when DeepSeek came out, Apple is going up because Apple downplayed AI in their strategy, and Apple has a lot of capital that they didn't spend in training unnecessary models or hiring AI experts that have actually nothing to do.
If you think about this, AI will replace developers. I think this train of thought comes from actually Elon Musk getting into Twitter way before this AI thing was a big deal, and getting rid of devs and still being able to run the company. But what you see, if you look at at X.com reviews on the apps, you will see people complain, and they do not complain. Some of them complain, of course, about the political position of Elon Musk, but I want to keep it about the product. And you will see that the product, the UX, everything got worse, right? And X started having issues, which kind of proves the point that Elon might have been mistaken. But it seems like these big CEOs are just modeling Elon at this point because they probably don't know any better. And that brings me to a third point. Why is this the best time to get ahead as a developer?
So from what I see, everybody's kind of busy and paralyzed by AI. A lot of developers jumped into learning machine learning all of a sudden, or thinking about going back to uni and getting a PhD or a master because they believe that developer skills would be replaced. And everybody's kind of paralyzed. And instead of getting better, the craft, which is it's a complex and it needs time and you need to invest time to get good. Everybody's either paralyzed or trying to jump on the gold rush and become an AI ML developer. And something similar is not the same, but something similar happened back in the days with blockchain, where if you remember, I think in 2021, a lot of people, and we were coaching developers back then, and a lot of people would say, well, I'm going to become a blockchain developer because they make $500,000 or something. And then 6 months later, the same person will be unemployed and going back to their original job that actually pays real money. So people are getting distracted, or they feel like they have to act on this anxiety, and they're actually not getting better at the craft. And so they will wake up 6 months from now, maybe 1 year from now, in the same point they left. And it's the people that actually get better today that will have a huge advantage in 1 year, 2 years from now.
And again, this comes from this madness of the crowds. And what I would tell the people watching us, developers watching us, it's we gotta stop, expecting social media or the algorithm or Mark Zuckerberg or whoever make decision for us, right? Because whether you choose to stay in the sector or you choose to branch out because there is no future in software, that's a major life decision. And you cannot leave this to the crowd, right? And the crowd can be your boss. I see tech CEOs and CTOs, and I see people that they look very qualified on paper that know very little about the specifics of AI, and they haven't done their analysis, and they are, saying things. And then you have all these mid-level devs, junior devs that are like, hey, I cannot take it anymore. I'm so confused. I don't think there's a future in this. I put it, I invested so much time into, branching into this career, learning how to code. And now they're basically telling me it's over, right? And I think that's a very dangerous message. And my advice to the mid-level, to the junior dev, even to the senior dev who's questioning, right? If you're questioning your career choice, do not. I invite you to dive deep, to go down the rabbit hole and do your own analysis. Do not listen to these people and do not make the mistake of thinking that they know more than you. Sure, the chief scientists, the people that actually build those LLMs, they know a lot more than you, but they cannot tell much because it will damage the PR of the companies they work for, right? There's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of noise. And this is when you're engineering, you have to use whatever you learn as an engineer and do your own analysis, right? And you will see, as Bogdan and I see every day, that this is it's a big bluff. And 6 months from now, the people that are going to be ahead, the developers that will, get up, and even in the last 2 years, ChatGPT came out in October, 2022. Ever since, we saw dozens of developers, getting pay raises, getting promoted, doing amazing at their job, right? And you have to see behind the smoke. That's the one advice I would give you. Do not follow the crowd. These people, one person says something, the other people repeat it. That's how social media works. You have DeepSeek coming out, and then you have every other YouTuber making a video about DeepSeek very fast to get a click. But the analysis, they all talk about the same. and they'll talk about AGI when like freaking Claude cannot handle 30 Python files. We are far away from that. And the only type of real intelligence we have now is the human intelligence. So go back to that, trust yourself, believe yourself, do your own analysis, and keep on improving your skills, folks. As for us, thank you, Bogdan, and we will see you folks in the next one.